Hey everybody. It's been a couple of weeks since I've posted a video, so I thought I would make a point to reach out because a lot has happened. I realized I hadn't posted a blog either since I was about to get out of quarantine. So, yes, I'm out of quarantine crazy, right? Okay, so I have a lot to cover. I don't have a lot of time. I'm going to work soon, so I figure I'll just get to it. So, first off, I'm out of quarantine. On my first couple of days after quarantine, I had to go get tested, and the location that was suggested to me by the health administration here in Offenbach was the Uniklinik in Frankfurt. So I biked out there and got myself tested, which they didn't allow photos. Unfortunately, I really wanted to take photos simply because it was a really interesting situation. It seems like they took an old, almost seems like an old location that was used for parking tickets, where people would go and pay parking tickets. That kind of small building, that doesn't have a lot of other uses. Anyway, it was repurposed for testing. What is rather humorous about this building is that it had I'm talking massive windows. So you would walk up to it, of course, everybody with 2 meters apart from everyone, right? So that's important to note. But yes, you'd walk up to this building, and then in the first location, you would get your paperwork, explain your situation, and then fill it out so that way they could get your information back to you later, your test results, and your health insurance card, because they needed to know who it gets billed, or they would put it to the health insurance. However, the billing actually with Corona is rather complicated due to a variety of reasons. And then you go and wait. Once again, everybody's 2 meters. Everybody's wearing face masks in this location because, hey, if you think you actually have Corona and there's a potential somebody else doesn't have Corona, so everybody was wearing masks at this point. And this was 2 weeks ago, a week and a half ago. So, yes, so it was one of those before everybody started wearing masks all the time. So, then you go up to the second window. The second window is also massive. I'm talking, it must have been 3.5 meters by 2 meters. That's just a guess, right? But I'm talking, it's a large window, and they wouldn't open it, like they didn't have any kind of like small box or anything to open it, and you didn't go into any room because everybody was outside waiting in a line. And this was at 9:30 in the morning when I show up, because they're only open from 9 until 1 o'clock during the day to take people for tests. So I show up and I'm waiting in line for my test, and then they open this window, and the window opens forward, right? So they're pushing the window forward, and then there's just like this massive space. It's such a weird situation when it comes to testing, because it's obviously not built for it. Not to mention the fact that it's they're gowned up, because these people aren't I would assume negative, maybe not, maybe they've already been positive and back negative again, but they are suited up. They have their gowns, they have their hair nets, they have face shields, and then they had duct tape taping their gloves to their gowns. And then this person, both days, because I was there the 15th and 16th of April, they would take their little Q-tip, right, their swab, and like put their arm out from the window. So, right, they open this door, and it's, this window, which is massive, and then they have this little tiny space they try to create because they are trying to protect themselves, but then they take this teeny sapien and they still have to like stick it out this window, so it's a super ridiculous situation. Like, you feel for the guy. And I felt horrible the second day. I mean, I know this is part of their work, because it's part of my work too. But I totally rubbed my tonsil wrong, and I coughed on him. I was negative, luckily, but even then it doesn't matter. Like, he just rubbed the right way, and then of course he's like immediately trying to shut the window on his own arm, which makes it even more dumb. Anyway, so that was my testing situation. Pretty hilarious. Yeah, Pretty hilarious. Luckily, I got both of my test results back sooner than it was expected. When I originally went there, they told me it would take at least 7 days. So, get this. Throughout this whole thing, just to be clear, German healthcare system, it's not a question of whether or not it's getting paid for, it's a question of who's paying for it. That stuff I still have to do more research about or learn more about to actually know. But in this situation, I handed them my insurance card and then got my insurance card back and then went and gave a sample. And I did that 2 days in a row. Money was never questioned. That was never even brought up. Never even a thought. And at work, which I went back to on Tuesday of this week, because they were doing testing as well, and they wanted me to come and get tested anyway since I hadn't gotten my second negative test results back yet. And when I was there, I was able to look at like schedule and information and ask questions, and it seems that humorously enough as well, my first, because of my car accident, the hit and run, and then I had 2 weeks, it was all sick time, right? So on my plan, my schedule, it shows just sick time. And I know right now I will get paid for all of it. There's no question. There's no question about whether or not that I have to worry about any of this, and they're not going to question me about any of it because I have doctor's note for when I got hit by the car, and then I have a doctor's note for when I first showed symptoms with corona, and then my last week of felt like vacation in the end. My last week. So on Monday of last week or Tuesday of last week. Oh yeah, that's right. So was it this past week? Last week. Tuesday of last week was my last day in quarantine. And then Wednesday through basically Wednesday of this week. So another week was written off for corona. But I will get paid for it for whatever days I had been scheduled. I am not financially impacted whatsoever by the pandemic because of the way the German system is set up. So my American friends, I know a lot of times we think about that these kinds of things, who's paying, we ask questions like who's paying for it or where's the money coming from? I'm going to go into more detail about that regarding the cultural differences and why I think that is in one way more possible in German culture and then the expectations of German culture in comparison, at least in my impression. But it is possible. So don't think these kinds of things are not a potential future, right? But cultural changes would have to occur. Anyways, I will talk about that later. I'm back at work. I started work yesterday. Work, we are good on materials, and that at the same time it's obvious that there are certain materials we don't have tons of. So for example, when I'm at work, we still have some positive patients on our ward, and when I go to work I have to wear a gown over my scrubs regularly, and then when I'm going into the rooms where there are still positive patients, I have to wear a second gown on top of my original gown, as well as a hairnet and a face mask over the other face mask I was already wearing, because I also have to continuously wear a face mask when I'm in the building. And then I wear a shield or goggles and gloves, obviously, all of which are taken off after the fact. Makes work in some ways a little longer some days, simply because we have to put so much more on and then take it off after going in, and we can't just walk in and walk out of some patients' rooms like before. That makes it complicated. But work was in general okay. Most of our patients were unallowed to leave their rooms unless they were smokers, and then we have a balcony, fortunately, so they were allowed to go to the balcony and smoke on the balcony. But outside of that, life is pretty tough for those guys. They aren't allowed to leave their rooms at all, and they have been that way for almost a month now. So, when you're thinking about quarantine being tough, imagine not only do most of my patients have other issues. Normally, they don't leave our building very often, which is still an emotional pressure and impact on them. And now, on top of it, with the pandemic, they can't leave their rooms. So, stop complaining. I will do my best to stop complaining too, because they've really got a hard situation. Now, the last thing I wanted to mention was simply the current expectations for how people go about their daily life here in Germany, in Hessen, where I live. So people have a comparison to other places in the world from a first-hand experienced person. In Hessen now, we still have the 2 meter or 1.5 meter social distancing expectation. In most grocery stores, on Monday, it is required statewide in Hessen to wear a mask if you're in a grocery store or in any other kind of enclosed space, I believe. Salons, however, small stores like a small bike shop that's about 80 square meters is allowed to be open now with the expectations of social distancing being heavily enforced. So keep that in mind. So yes, so we have to wear masks, but some shops have opened up again. And then next week, Monday, so May the 4th, be with you for salons, because salons will be opening back up on May the 4th here in Germany, because Germans can't handle not being able to color and or dye their hair on a regular basis. It seems like that was more important than some other aspects of German culture. I thought maybe cafes would come first, but nope, salons are definitely there. Outside of that, they still have high expectations on staying at home on a regular basis. However, there are still plenty of people who go outside to go exercise. When I was on my run today, there was a cop car driving down the main. I'm 100% sure to just be that silent. I'm driving by. So if you are hanging out in larger groups, you should just be aware it's not okay. Doing their silent patrol, not really doing anything, just driving through. I'm sad not to see more horse police. I think that would be hilarious, but I'm sure that would also be harder to clean up after. And potentially more dangerous, simply because on the main it gets pretty busy, and even now it's already busy despite social distancing. In Oregon, I have never experienced something like this, and anywhere I've been, granted I haven't been to many places in the world, I'm sure any place that has heavy pedestrian and or bike traffic has the same experience, where you have to weave in and out, and that is an intense experience here in Frankfurt on the Main on a sunny day. There are lots of potential to hit and or get hit by people, and waiting in line to go beyond traffic. Traffic is an issue on the Main. Anyways, so yes, I have my tests. I'm back at work. I am healthy. Oh, and the last thing I wanted to mention, I am partaking in 2 additional things that I don't believe the average person would be taking part in here. But I found out about because of a group I'm a part of. I am taking part in a Impfung study. So that's a vaccine. So I will be giving blood samples, because I was positive and am now negative, to the university, so that they can try to either create vaccines and or antibodies from my blood. So, woo, that's exciting, doing good for the world, or at least Germany. And the second thing is that I was also asked, when I was making my appointment to go give my blood, if I wanted to be part of a study for lung and heart damage. Because as people have been noting in the past week, I've heard from other people as well that it's become a thing. People, like most influenza type diseases, if you get them too bad and for too long, you can have permanent effects on your lungs and or heart. And they are definitely seeing that by COVID patients or recoveries from COVID patients. I was very lucky in that it did not heavily affect me. Like I said, I had like fever for maybe a day and a half. And other than that, my lung and nose stuff and all of that was very minor. So I will be taking part in that test. Also, just so you're aware, and of course I will talk about my tests and what information comes out of that so that people know what it's like. After I recovered, once I was out of quarantine, I started jogging again right away. And right before I was in quarantine, I was jogging 6 miles almost every day. So I was in fairly good health. I am overweight, but I was in very good health lung-wise and heart-wise. I don't smoke. I do drink, but I don't do any alternative drugs of any kind. So this is, yeah, it should be really interesting to see if I had any permanent damage, because I feel like, considering the fact that I know I take very good care of myself and I eat fairly healthy, I eat a lot of vegetables on a regular basis. And if I had heart damage or lung damage from COVID, that's going to throw so much of this whole, let's not, so much of this anti, whatever, because you can get a common cold, you can get this, and then if you have permanent damage for the rest of your life from this particular virus because it is more intense, that's not just shitty for us, and it's not just a shitty situation considering how many people will have and have had died because of COVID, but just reinforces the fact that maybe people are making crap up, you know? Maybe there is reality to this. Maybe we should be taking this very seriously and be thinking about how we interact with other people and how much we're actually expanding the accessibility of the virus for others. Because even if your elderly relative then has survived COVID with a minor cold, but they were having problems before, and now all of a sudden they have an extra heart problem, Schädigung, as Germans say, it's like a badness, something that has permanently affected their heart, then they're just doing that much worse, period. And imagine young people who get it bad, who don't die, but they just get it bad. So anyway, long post, sorry. But yeah, so that's what I've got for today. And I will check in again, probably posting, writing, that kind of thing. But yeah, I will keep you updated also about my test results and how work is going. And because the impression I'm getting is probably within the next week, our ward will be negative again. And most of my coworkers will be back to work, probably within a week and a half. Although I know some of them are still testing positive. So, yeah. See you guys later.